going on, y'all? It's Rob back in the shop at Biltwell again. I've got one of our customer service guys, Omar's 2016 Street Bob on the lift, and we're gonna talk about installing our AlumiCore grips with a dual cable throttle. These are the tools you're gonna need. 2 3/8" open-end wrenches, a 3/16 Allen, some sort of pick, a 1/2" wrench, a T25 Torx, a T27 Torx, a razor blade, blue Loctite, and anti-seize. First thing you need to do is remove your old grips. You can use them with compressed air or with a razor blade. Once you got the old grips off the bars, go ahead and clean each bar end with some surface cleaner to get any grime, grease, or glue off of there. Once you have your old grips off and your bar ends clean, go ahead and remove the 2 Torx bolts in your switch housing clamshells. We're going to start with our clutch side AlumiCore grip. First thing we're going to want to do is remove this end cap from the grip before we install it. And the way you do that is just push it out, and this little wedge just takes a little bit of encouragement to slide out. You see it came out real easy right there. Sometimes it may be inside the grip and this lip will catch. If that's the case, just wiggle a little bit, it'll come right out. Once you have your bar end wedge mechanism removed from your AlumiCore grip, there's one thing we need to do before the installation. We need to have this nylock properly installed on the end of this bolt. Now you can see here, this nylock is just finger tight. I want this nylock to where at least one thread from this bolt is exposed. So just take your 3/16 Allen and your 1/2" wrench and tighten that nylock until at least one thread is exposed. Just like that. Now the reason we have this nylock on the end of this system is so that none of these components loosen up and get lost on the inside of your bar. Take your clutch side AlumiCore grip, slide it on the bar, and what we need to do is get this larger OD of into the saddle. So what I like to do is slide it on, make sure it's all the way butted against the end of the bar, rotate that larger OD towards the bottom, take your switch housing clamshell on top, drop in your Torx bolt, get some threads going, don't tighten it fully. Take your bottom Torx bolt, get some threads in. Before you tighten everything fully, make sure this grip is totally butted against the end of your bar, and go ahead and tighten down your clamshell bolts. The next step is to install your wedge mechanism into the bar end. Before you do that, just double check to make sure your bar end is totally butted up against the inside of the grip. Once that's all nice and good, slide this bar end mechanism in. And tighten it down. Before we install our AlumiCore throttle sleeve on our bars, we need to first remove the original plastic throttle sleeve from the throttle mechanism. Now, first, we need to collapse both throttle cables, making them fully slacked. Take one wrench, break loose the jam nut, and then collapse the adjuster, and do the same thing for the other throttle cable. Break loose that jam nut, and then fully collapse this one as well. And what this is doing is giving you as much slack as you can to remove and install the new throttle. Once you have both throttle cables fully collapsed and slacked, you're going to want to remove your clamshell from your switch housing. To do that, take the torx bits out of the top, as well as the one on the bottom. Now that you've got your throttle cables collapsed, you're going to go ahead and remove the furls from the original plastic throttle housing. Helps sometimes to have a pick or some sort of something to help these get out of there. They can be a little tough. There's one. Now these ferrules are loose, so pay attention. Don't let it fall out on the ground into a crack or anything like that. Take your second one, slide it up, and push it out. I have that ferrule. And then you can go ahead and remove the original throttle tube. Now that your original throttle tube is off, go ahead and wipe down the bar underneath that. Get the original lube off of there. Now before you install the new AlumiCore throttle sleeve, I like to put a little bit of anti-seize on the bar end. Remember, you don't need much. And then give it a nice little smear. Doesn't need to be a heavy film, just a nice light film. Not only do I like to put anti-seize on the end of the bar, I also like to put some on the throttle housing where it interfaces the clamshells. And this just helps in keeping a friction-free mating surface. Go ahead and take your AlumiCore grip, slide it on the bar, get it to where it nests inside the housing, and you're gonna want to install those ferrules. Take one ferrule, slide it onto that ball end, and then what you need to do is get it into the groove or the receptacle. It's a little tricky, just be patient, take your time. Just like that. Now, once we got the pull one, we're going to take the return one and put it in the second spot. Just like that. Now that you've got both throttle cables and ferrules properly installed in the AlumiCore grip, you can go ahead and install the top cover of your clamshell. Set it right on there. Drop in your top torx bolt. Thread it in. Do not tighten it just yet. And then we're going to do the same on the bottom. Now that you got both torx bolts in and lightly threaded, go ahead and tighten them up. Put a little bit of blue Loctite on the thread there. You don't need much. Go ahead and install your end cap on the grip with your 3/16 Allen. Once you've got everything installed, just double check to make sure there's no bind in the throttle operation and you've got your bolts tightened. Everything looks good. Now we can adjust the throttle cables. The last step is to adjust the throttle cables by taking out the slack, and you can find the proper procedure outlined in your factory service manual. Once you've got them adjusted properly, go ahead and tighten your jam nuts against the adjusters to ensure that they do not loosen up. Just get them up there with your fingers and then take 2 3/8 wrench and tighten them down. Once you get those jam nuts tight, just go ahead and slip those protective rubbers back up over if your bike has them. We've molded grooves in our grips to use safety wire if you choose so. So that's how you install our AlumiCore grips on a Harley-Davidson that utilizes a dual throttle cable setup. Please remember, check the bolts that you loosened and retightened, as well as the operation of your throttle. You're looking for a friction-free movement. Thanks, y'all.